This is the cutest, cheapest, stupidest, and smart 8-bit Nintendo clone from Japan, and it was just $18. 8-bit joystick. I gotta love the humble Famiclone. This is the Lite Play Computer Retro. It is cute, cheap, a little stupid, and very smart. There have been some high-quality Famicom clones on the market for almost as long as the Famicom itself. Nintendo used readily available parts and did not have any copy protection for cartridges. For much of the world, such as the Philippines, China, India, the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and much of Asia outside of Japan, high-quality Famicom clones were how people experienced 8-bit Nintendo games in the 80s and 90s. For hundreds of millions of 8-bit console gamers around the world, they were more likely to have a little Tyrant, a Dendy, or whatever Famiclone was locally manufactured and was actually affordable, rather than an NES or a Famicom. Hey, thank you for watching this video, and if you like it, please subscribe. It really does help the channel. So when Suruga-Ya had their last free shipping promotion, I saw 2 videos from my favorite Japanese retro video game YouTubers on this little guy right here, and I had to order one. The Lite Play Computer Retro is also known as the LITHON KTFC-004W. It costs roughly 2,800 yen, or 1920 new, but I got mine for 2,600 yen, or about $18 used. It is a game console that fits in the palm of your hand based on miniaturized 8-bit Nintendo architecture that is derisively known as NES-on-a-Chip. This combines the CPU, the Picture Processing Unit or PPU, and the RAM and the sound chip onto a single cheap-to-produce chip that you can actually see from inside the cartridge slot. I don't have a problem with modern NES-on-a-Chip systems as long as they are good, and they have really come a long way in recent years. It uses 60-pin Japanese Famicom cartridges. However, you can use a 72 to 60-pin adapter to play American NES cartridges on it. Amusingly and awesomely, since this is designed for the Japanese market, it has expanded audio support. Unlike the NES and most non-FPGA NES clones. Unfortunately, Akumajou Densetsu Japanese Castlevania 3 did not boot up. However, Gradius 2, which has a special Konami chip in the cartridge, and other expanded audio games like Lagrange Point works. The US version of Castlevania 3 works swimmingly. Like many Famiclones, it can't use the Famicom Disk System or the EverDrive N8 Fami, but it handled almost all the Famicom cartridges, bootleg carts, multi-carts, and even all the NES carts that I could throw at it. Except Akumajou Densetsu. But there are no pirated games included, but there's a selection of 118 indie homebrew Famicom games. But every time I was looking at it, I was just wishing I was playing one of my several hundred Famicom cartridges. I have greatly enjoyed playing FC Bonk's Adventure, a bootleg ROM hack of the Mega Man games but with Roll-chan as the main protagonist, my bootleg Famicom version of Panic Restaurant, my copy of Konami's Gradius that had the label destroyed, and a Japanese school kid in the 1980s handcrafted his own label out of construction paper in the 1980s. So while the original Famicom had the controllers hardwired to the back of the system, this system has these small removable controllers. At least the D-pad is pretty decent size, and the button layout is okay. Still, this is not about high-end gaming. This is quite literally one of the cheapest systems that I could find, and the controllers are okay for the job. However, they didn't use the same 7-pin Nintendo controller connectors that were used on the NES and the redesigned AV Famicom. These look like the same kind of connectors as the Sega Genesis, the Atari 2600, and the Sega Master System. Unfortunately, they used a different pin layout, and you cannot use a Sega Genesis controller with it. You also can't use accessories like the NES Zapper or the Famicom gun since there's no way to connect them. On the back, you will find a mono RCA component AV out, which is actually better than the original Famicom, which were RF only and was set to Japanese analog TV channels. There's no HDMI output, but you can plug this into any NTSC American or Japanese CRT TV. And you can plug it into an AV to HDMI adapter, but honestly, you're going to have a much better time playing it on any real CRT TV, including a rescue TV set that you find by the side of the road, or given away online for free, or just use a clone system that has HDMI. But this isn't about HDMI, it is for nostalgic nerds who love CRT rendered pixel goodness. Now, there are a ton of inexpensive Yasui 8-bit Nintendo Famicom clones on the market in Japan. However, this one is USB powered, and I specifically chose it because the United States uses a slightly higher power voltage, 125 volts, than Japan, 100 volts. And systems made for the Japanese market have the possibility of running a little too hot in the US. The nifty swell thing about USB-powered devices is as long as you are using a domestic AC adapter power brick, it's going to use the output with the same power that's needed. I'm a little worried about using Japanese power bricks with my imported Japanese systems in America, but it's not really necessary for me to worry about a cheap little $18 clone system running too hot, but I still care because I don't want the little guy to get burned out. There's the Japanese concept of Tsukumogami, or the spirit of the tool. Now, I mentioned Suruga-Ya, and they are a national retail chain that sells mostly used video games, anime, and nerd merchandise. They are actually all across Japan, and they have a healthy used item market. And they're a great market for Japanese books, manga, anime figures, Blu-rays, and CDs. Their prices are a little bit more than the auction sites, but you're not going through a middleman. You're buying it directly from them. And they also keep having free shipping promotions like all the time. The items aren't on sale. However, the fact that they will cover the cost of free shipping DHL for any item ordered around the world with no minimum order requirement is very attractive for nerds such as myself, and probably you. It is cute, kawaii, nostalgic, natsukashi. And this little system not only manages to make me nostalgic for the official Nintendo Famicoms, but the humble Famiclone. But if you're already being deliberately archaic by playing cartridges of 8-bit games on a CRT TV, then you could use one of these little Famicom clone systems to go about doing it. But if you want to take the next step of hipster archaic obscurity, it's almost like lo-fi music. It really is the imperfections that allow you to zone out and really enjoy the ambiance and character. The totally illogical thing is that I have two real NES systems, two Hyperkin Retron HD clone systems, and two actual Famicom systems, and a really good quality Chinese-made Dandy clone, and an FPGA Perfect Retro USB AVS that can play NES games and Famicom games in crystal clear FPGA quality by HDMI TVs. But it is the imperfections that give it flavor. The closest thing that we have to this in the US is the Hyperkin Retron 1 AV, and that's about $30. This is a new level of hipsterdom with this console. I mean, what's next? Listening to vinyl records on a potato? Portland. It could happen. I figure if you're going to be playing retro video games on cartridges, then you might as well be playing them on a CRT TV. And then you might as well embrace the diversity of different retro game systems that have their own unique flavor and user experiences. So my father is a professor of chemistry, and he would tell you that hyperdistilled water just doesn't taste right. It's because the salt and the electrolytes and the impurities that give it a flavor. It's not a lot, but it's subtle, and you will notice the absence if it's not there. It's got electrolytes. This is like a cheap instant ramen that's best enjoyed at 2 a.m. It's sort of hideous, but nothing else tastes like it, and nothing else gives you that nostalgic dopamine effect. This is full of retro video game monosodium glutamate MSG umami goodness. Fuiyoh! It is ridiculous in that there are much better ways one can go about playing NES and Famicom games, but the brutal efficiency of being able to design a game system that can be manufactured and sold at a profit for less than $20 is crazy smart. And if you're into cognitive dissonance, it's stupidly smart. Or is it smartly stupid? I guess we'll never know. It's not for everybody, but it is full of umami retro flavor. And if you're into playing your retro video games in increasingly eclectic different ways, then this cheap, cute, stupid, and yet smart 8-bit Nintendo clone console from Japan might just be right for you. Tune in next week, since the videos will be the secret Excitebike Nintendo adapters and cleaning non-working NES cartridges. Hey, we make rad videos like this each week, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. It's free! Then let YouTube know that you liked the video by hitting that like button. And if you have something to say, then leave it in the comment. Yeah, that's right, kitty. I read them and I reply to all of them. Hey, since you stayed to the end of the video, you should totally check out my video on the Retro USB AVS, the best way to play NES and Famicom cartridges. And you can click on that video that's floating right about here. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome. Play retro.